Hey, this is Justin Herman, and welcome to Conversations in the Wild, a Maverick River podcast. I've been honored for the past year to be part of this podcast, sometimes on the episodes, sometimes behind the scenes, kind of making sure the podcast works. But Tim and I have been friends for years. A lot of people don't know that. We go back like over a decade in church ministry, serving the local church. And I've gotten to see up close a couple things that draw me to want to be involved with the podcast. I have seen Tim as the pastor caring for people who need it when maybe they don't even realize that they need it. I've seen Tim, the humble servant, when things are not always going perfectly. He has consistency of vision for what we're doing, not just as a men's ministry at the church we're at, but for people, for their personal lives. It's sitting knee to knee with him, having conversations with him. He makes time for you. Like, I've been a benefactor of that. And seeing his passion, the passion he has for men. See, this episode actually is a really exciting one because it's been 1 year since Maverick River Collective launched, and Tim he shared, here and there, but he's never really shared on the podcast here with the Maverick River community. He's never shared about 501c3, about the ministry basis for everything he's doing, about how he's working with churches to ignite men to follow Jesus. And I'm personally honored to be on the advisory board for this ministry. Why? Well, it's simple. Men's ministry changed my life. Men's ministry for me is not just a thing that I show up at, and I'm sure a lot of you out there listening are going to agree. A good men's ministry, you can define and see a good men's ministry from a mile away. Because you can just show up at something, maybe you're kind of forced to be there, you're kind of guilted into being there, and there's no excitement, there's no passion, and most of all, there's no community. That is the opposite of what has been my men's ministry experience. I show up there, there's guys who know me and I know them. Even if I've been gone for a while, there's guys who know me and I know them. One of the hardest times of my life, and I've shared about it in other places, I got let go from a job one time. One of the hardest moments of my life. Where did I find myself? 2 days later, I found myself at a men's breakfast, talking with guys, owning a little bit of the failure I've just experienced, but being able to talk with guys who know me, share my story, my struggle, my pain, and they're there for me. Ministry like that, the kind of men's ministry that draws you in, gives you community, it equips the church to build impactful, multi-generational men's ministries. And that's what Maverick River is all about. It's a major need in this country. 10% of churches, only 10%, have men's ministries. And the need has never been greater for men to step up with one another, not just step up alone. And there's a lot of stuff out there that'll be like, hey, step up be a solo, go on your own. No. Step up in community with other men. So here's the thing. I'm excited for this because if you're open, maybe you hear what I just said and you're like, man, this fires me up. I want to be in a community like that, or I am in a community like that. Like this fires me up because I know the impact it can have. If you're open to being part of this, if you're open to donating financially to help keep this thing moving, Maverick River, you know that your dollars make a great impact. And go to help, just a few things. Let me just list them. They help building men's ministries all over the country, which means you are helping marriages. You are helping dads be awesome dads. When you build the man, everything changes for the family, for family legacy, for his career, for the culture of that church, for the marketplace, the local business, where he is involved. Change follows when we build that man up. It also helps make this podcast happen because it takes dollars to build a great podcast. It takes time. It takes investment. This is not just a podcast for the vanity of podcasts. It's not just a podcast to throw out there into the world, just some stuff. We want this to be a place that builds up men throughout the week. It also helps the third mission of Maverick River. You might think, well, what's the third mission? Let me tell you what it is. It's all about creating epic adventures for men. We want men to go on incredible adventures, encounter Jesus, as well as father-son retreats and eventually couples retreats too. The father-son one, I'm excited for that. I'm planning on bringing my boys out to the father-son. Not that we couldn't just do it ourselves, right? But the truth is that we don't. But can we be honest? We don't. And how great is it not to have to worry about the planning, the details? How great is it to show up with your son? You're surrounded by other men who want to have that same kind of relationship, that same kind of impact. And you get to show up and you get to just forget about the details. It's all been taken care of, and you get connected with your kid. That's what I want. I love that. It's an amazing ministry, and I'm so proud of Tim. I'm proud of the work of Maverick River. I believe so strongly that if we can see more men taking responsibility for their family, for their life, their faith, they take steps that are bold steps, we will see things in this country, in this world, in local churches transform. Maverick River right now is working with 8 churches all over the country, almost 2,000 downloads an episode of the podcast, and one adventure that's changed 10 men's lives in April, and a father and son retreat that's happening in October. These are just the list of things that are happening. But if you're listening to this, you know how important a men's ministry is. You have your own story. Head over to Instagram. You'll see a post on this episode. Go leave a little bit of what your story is, how men's ministry has made an impact in your life. Because when we are able as men to encourage, invest in, and sometimes that means financially investing in the ministry that is happening with men in other places, there is something good that happens to our own faith. Our own faith starts to grow because we just see like this generous heart taking shape and growing and expanding, and I love that. Now, I actually want to take a few minutes because I don't want to just keep going and going, although I could talk about Tim and the impact he's made in my life and many other men's lives. I actually want to jump in and have a little bit of a conversation with Tim. I'm going to turn the table and actually be the one interviewing him for a change. So, Tim, welcome to your podcast. I'm happy you're here.
Man, I'm honored to be on this podcast. I thought it would never happen to where I could be on the Maverick River podcast. This is a huge win for me. Thanks for having me on, Justin.
Well, dude, I gotta be honest. I remember when you got the vision for this. I remember talking with you on the phone. I don't know if I was on a run or what I was doing. But I remember getting on the phone with you and you sharing with me this vision you have. And then, bam, fast forward, churches like if that's just a couple of churches, a huge handful of churches impacted a year later. Podcasts are going, retreats are happening. From your perspective, just share for everyone who probably has no idea, how the heck did Maverick River get started? What was the beginning?
Yeah. Oh man, thanks. Thanks for that incredible opener. It's fun to have you in the driver's seat and back on the podcast. And thank you for all your work. You are the genius behind the scenes, making sure these things get edited and posted. So thank you for all your work on that. It's been a pleasure
Thank you. Thank you
to
very
be your
much.
friend and to do this together. So, how did Maverick River get started? Well, honestly, it got started when I started doing ministry, which was, voluntarily over 20 some years ago, heavily involved in the ministry of Young Life. And the way that I have learned and understood ministry is how Young Life does it. Young Life is a global organization that primarily works with youth, and they have this incarnational Christ-focused ministry that goes where the students are. They go where the people are, just like how Jesus showed up in, not just waited for people in the synagogues, but he went out to where the people were. And Young Life does an incredible job of going and meeting the lost and the seeking and the youth that desperately need Jesus. And so I learned, and also through one of my favorite in life verses, John 10:10, Jesus came to give life and life to the full. Like, ministry should be fun. Following Jesus should be absolutely epic and adventurous. And so that's the beginning for me, was volunteering in Young Life. Met my wife through Young Life. Fast forward, eventually got called to the local church, Mariners Church, in youth. They at the time Mariners was doing a Young Life model, and so because of my experience with Young Life, I got hired as one of the youth pastors to go start up a ministry in North Irvine, and then I've been on staff for 16 years, 8 of which has been the men's pastor. I'd never in a million years, one, would have ever thought myself to be a pastor, just didn't feel qualified or worthy, let alone being a pastor to men is just not something I signed up for or ever thought. But eventually, God just kept opening doors and made it very clear, and through obedience and faith, stepped into that position. And I got to be honest, the first few years were tough. I stepped into a ministry that was led by a guy named Paul before me, and everybody loved him, and nobody loved me at first, and that's okay. And we began moving the needle to create a multi-generational men's ministry. And that's the thing. You had mentioned 10% uh, of the churches in the U.S. have men's ministries. Here's the deal. I learned yesterday it's actually 7% of the churches in our country have a men's ministry, and 93% have a women's ministry. And that's amazing. But
Mm.
of those seven, I'm convinced most of them are not multi-generational. And so I was 35 at the time, and I'm like, I need a ministry that I want to attend. So I just took a youth ministry model, which came from Young Life, and we made a really attractional, fun, but very, very strategic on helping guys encounter Jesus and be radically transformed and change their families, their marriages, their workplace, and all the things you mentioned. So I learned a ton in 8 years, and about a year and a half or so ago, I felt God kind of giving me this idea that there is more, that He wanted to multiply what I had learned and the framework and the strategies that I had used to build men at Mariners, and that's flourished and thrived. And we're seeing tons and tons of men be a part of this ministry at Mariners Church. But I was like feeling like, man, I gotta take what I've learned and help more churches. This is too important to reach men in today's culture. It's just absolutely pivotal, but I didn't understand what it meant and I didn't know how it would work. But I just started getting more and more vision of, man, maybe I need to make a nonprofit that is a men's ministry that does three things. It helps more churches build multi-generational, impactful, transformative men's ministries, that has a podcast for the everyday listener that can just be inspired to be a great father, to be a better husband, to really stop compartmentalizing their life of faith and at work or whatever that could be, and truly surrender to Jesus. And then I've seen so much transformation when guys stop the everyday things that they do in life and they go on an adventure, and you create space, you create an environment for men to encounter Jesus and be transformed in community out in the outdoors. And so adventures is pivotal. Both you and I have a huge heart to build father-son relationships. It's essential in our country today. The stats are staggering how we have a fatherless generation. So that inspired that this ministry is very much about being great fathers and to pass on biblical legacy and helping kids become great men for the future. And also, eventually, like you said, couples retreats is definitely something my wife and I dream about often and what that could look like. So Maverick's going to do all those things. And so I just started, seeking wisdom, praying a lot, surrendering, and ultimately felt God was very clear. And I just stepped out in faith. I worked out with Mariners, moving into part-time so that I could build Maverick River. And then I also felt like I didn't have a depth in relationship with Mark Batterson, but he'd been inspirational in just my journey as a pastor, as a follower of Jesus. I've read all his books, and I was like, man, I have his cell phone. I wonder if I could text him and I would just ask him, hey, I got this idea for this ministry called Maverick River. And if I got his approval, I knew that I had to take a leap of faith and just jump and go for it. And so I text him one day. He's so kind and responded and said, "Yeah, I got some time. Let's talk. I want to hear it." He's such a dreamer and advocate for dreamers. And so when I pitched the idea to him, I literally said, "Hey, I want to know if you think this idea sucks, because if you think so, I won't have to do it, because this is terrifying. I mean, I'm literally having to go part-time and cut salary and medical insurance. All these things not need to happen. I got three kids, and I'm terrified because I think God's calling me to this. But I would love for to at least hear your opinion." And I shared the vision, and he paused, and he's like, "Dude, this is epic. You absolutely need to do it." And my heart sank, but I was also so fired up. And he said, "Not only do I know you need to do this, and I want to have you come out to Washington, D.C., and I want to sit down with you, and I want to have you pitch Maverick River to my Dream Collective team. And if we like what you're doing, we'd like to be your first donor and give you some seed money to get this thing going, because it's going to take money." And he basically said, "Look, the first thing I want you to do, and do it as soon as possible, is sign up to be a 501(c)(3). It takes time, and that'll be your fleece. But you got to go, you got to do it." Gave me some other wise counsel, and I was just beyond blown away that he had supported me in that way. So that's a little bit of how things go. And there was miracle after miracle in the process of this thing. Tons of support from friends, family. Some incredible people have been amazingly generous, and I'm beyond grateful that they believed in me and the mission. And I'm just blown away what God's done in 1 year. And pretty cool that this is the world's longest intro for us, but cool to have this conversation. But Batterson is going to be on this episode, so it's pretty fun that 1 year later we got Mark Batterson on the episode, which is pretty cool.
When you were getting everything started, what was, because that some of those things that you blew past, I mean, man, going part-time, that's scary, man. Stepping out on your own with a new idea. There's a lot of men out there who are probably thinking, man, I had an idea at one time in my life, and I kind of pushed it to the side. I didn't take the risk. Or maybe there's a guy out there with an idea who is like right there, ready to take the risk, and he's gonna learn in a moment from your own story. Like, it probably was scary. What went through your mind, your wife's mind, as you're like making these essentially big life family changes in pursuit of this vision?
Yeah, it was absolutely terrifying. There was many, many moments of panic and hesitation. And I think the biggest thing that was super concerning was just, I was full time and had a great position, still do. Um, but it was like, how does this work? Like, how does the bills get paid and feed my kids, and life? Like, how am I financially going to make this work? And um, little by little, it was just, validations of, this isn't about you. This is about what God's calling you to. And if we are people of faith, people of courage, um, we got to go. When God calls us, we got to go. It's not oh, that's a cool idea, maybe I should think about it or slow play it. You just got to charge. And like I said, there was a lot of oh crap moments, a lot of I don't think I should do this, a lot of talking with my wife. She was unbelievable. You asked the question. She's a woman of faith, and she said the scariest thing for me is us not doing this, because God's
Mhm.
calling us to this. And that was a really big aha moment on, wow, she feels it too. It's not just my call, it's her call. She feels like God's calling us to this, then we better go. And the last place I ever want to be is outside God's will. And he definitely made it clear through people, through circumstance, through prayer time, that this is what he's calling me to. I shared at the beginning, like I heard um, kind of this idea that multiply the mission. And I felt like, man, God's given me these tools and this vision and strategic framework to build men's ministries. Go help more churches because um, what we've built at Mariners is amazing. And what we need to do is help more churches and equip them and train them to really engage the men, and we'll see transformation that way. So yes, absolutely terrifying. And when you get a dream, uh, following your dream is no small thing. It's not for the faint of heart. If it was easy, everyone would do it. But the
Yeah.
reality is it's not. And you got to put your money where your mouth is as a follower of Jesus. And when he calls you something, you got to go. And he's been faithful. I'll tell you that through the generosity of a lot of people, God's provided in a beautiful way and continues to provide, and he's paving a way. So that, yeah, I was terrified, no doubt.
Wow. Last thing before we Mm. Last thing before we jump in with Mark, I always ask you this question, man. So this is not going to be a shocker coming from me. Just give me an overview, the state of men. Like, what are things that you talk to a lot of men, you talk to a lot of guys who are working in men's ministries at their churches. Like, what are you seeing culture wise when it comes to men? Biggest struggles, the biggest, issues they're facing. But wrap it up with, more importantly, where do you see God moving with men today?
Yeah, I think the first part of your question is men today, really in culture, are causing a majority of the problems in our society. And it's weird to say that, but I'm just talking statistically. I mean, 90% of all major crime is committed by men. Men commit 95% of the break-ins and burglaries in our country. 90% of all abuse to the family is committed by men. 94% of all drunk drivers, they're men. Uh, there's 15 male prisoners to every female prisoner. The 99% of all rapes are committed by men. Men are disconnected, where there's the pandemic really kind of shedded light on that men don't really have friends. Like there is like what they're calling the friendship recession, and men just don't have a lot of close friends. They're isolated, and when men are isolated, that's when a lot of problems occur. And guys, we keep seeing more and more issues with mental health, and men are unfortunately way ahead. 70% of all divorces in 2020 were male, which accounts for like 32,000 deaths. Like the state of men in today is an issue, let alone like the addictions with drug and alcohol abuse, pornography. I mean, it is rampant with needs. And so when I talk about how do we help men, I believe the local church is the answer, and that's why building a men's ministry is so pivotal. And why why that has changed, I don't really know why that men are not engaged in the local church the same way that women's ministry are. Women are more natural in just getting involved. Men were really resistant. Doesn't necessarily sound like a good time. We'd rather go watch a sporting event or whatever, or just not get involved. And so we need to change that narrative and get guys plugged into the local church. So that's a little bit about the state of culture. What kind of impact are we seeing? Well, you had mentioned earlier, we now have 8 churches that are partners with Maverick River, and several of those I've ran through. We have a men's ministry playbook, and we've launched several men's ministries that did not exist at churches before. There's a church in Utah, Mountain Life Church. Uh, they've already, since starting with Maverick River, their church is about 600 or 700, and they're getting 180 to 200 men showing up at their men's breakfast. That is incredible. The men are more engaged. They're showing up to church with their families. They're getting to know people. They're getting into groups, and it's changing that community. It's changing that church, and we're beginning to see that at a church up in Washington. I'm just started the process with a church in Michigan and several churches here in Southern California. And so what we're seeing is really beautiful, where more churches are launching men's ministries through a framework that I just think works, and just helping guys, the volunteer leaders or the staff people, um, build these things is pivotal. And so it's been incredible. Super grateful how God has blessed it, and I just know the best is yet to come.
Man, that's great. And gosh, I just love not only we got to spend a little time with you, I love that we're going to get to spend some more time with Mark Batterson. You've talked about him already. Give us just a quick intro before we get into the episode.
Yeah, Mark is definitely a hero of mine, and I picked up his book Play the Man. That was the first book of his that I read. Definitely not his first book he ever wrote, but he's written, I think, close to 25 books. He's a pastor of a mega church in Washington, D.C., obviously a a huge city for impact, and it's been really incredible uh, to be able to talk to him, to be supported by him. Like I said, he wrote a book called Draw the Circle and Circle Maker, two different books, wildly impactful on my life. And it's really about a bunch of dreams and prayers that he just had this massive vision for his church and his people. And then all these other people that were praying these big, audacious, crazy prayers that God fulfilled. And those two books we'll talk about in the episode. Mark is incredibly gifted communicator. I highly suggest listen to some of his sermons on his podcast. But man, he's a great guy. I'm beyond grateful that he's been supportive. But the thing about Mark is everybody needs someone that believes in them. And for me, that was it. In that moment where I called him and said, I have this idea, he believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And that's why he's so amazing that, he would say, I have someone in my life that believed that I could start a church in Washington, D.C. And that belief in someone, that could be a father to a son, a husband to a wife to a child, all the things. It's pivotal when you believe in someone and you share your belief in them, that they have something in them that is bigger than themselves. And so that's the gift that Mark gave me. I'm grateful. You're going to love this episode. He's awesome. Enjoy.
I'm looking forward to it. Let's just jump right into the episode. Here we go, In the Wild with Mark Batterson.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Maverick River Podcast, Conversations in the Wild. I couldn't be more excited for today's episode with one of my heroes, one of my favorite authors, and one of the best pastors in the country, maybe even the world. I'm with Mark Batterson. Welcome, Mark.
I'm chuckling at your introduction. I would scale back world, and I would scale back country.
No way.
But thank you.
I won't do it. I actually was like filtering. I wanted to go on and on. I had written a whole lecture on the intro and I could go on and on. But yeah, like Mark, I really have been a super fan reading your books for a long time. And you've been just someone I've listened to your sermons over the podcast for years. And like, I randomly was like, I got to get this guy to speak at a men's breakfast at Mariners. And so, but I secretly was like, I just want to meet him. And then I dangled a carrot and said, I'll put you up in a beachfront harbor view spot if you come out. And I think that's what got you here.
Yes, beachfront harbor view is it's not one of the 5 love languages, but if there was a 6th love language, that might be it. So, and I have to say, when I came, Tim, it was that's like the most number of guys in a singular room as I've been with in a long time. So have long appreciated your heart for men, men of God, and what that looks like. So a joy to be able to hop on and have a conversation.
Well, thanks. Yeah, so we kind of got to know each other a little bit, and I was blown away because I remember I was in a point in my life where I was like, man, I really hope he has some prophetic word for me or something. And I'll never forget, which is totally your posture. You pulled out a journal and like, hey, you had 650 guys in the room at the men's breakfast. I need to learn from you. And I was like, wait, what? I need to learn from you. Like it was this cool
Uh,
moment of like, wait a second. And at that moment, there was no Maverick River wasn't even necessarily on the radar. And fast forward, I'm kind of catching up this relationship because I consider it a joy that you came alongside me. But the short version is God started stirring something in me months and months later, and I felt like God was calling me to it. My wife was giving the thumbs up, and I'm like, I only need one more approval. And it's so random because I barely even know him, but I just text you, hey, any chance I could run an idea by you? I don't know if you remember, and you're like, yeah, let's do it. And I talked to you for like, you're like, I have 9 minutes. I'm like, all right, let me tell you what I'm dreaming up. And I'm like, Mark, please shoot me straight. Tell me it's a bad idea so I don't have to like do this thing because it's a big vision, it's a big dream. And I was just like, hey, Mark, what if I helped equip churches all over the country build men's ministries? And you're like, I love it. Do you
yeah,
remember?
you asked the wrong guy when it comes to big dreams.
Probably why I felt like God prompted me to ask you because I just knew I needed the approval from the dreamer of dreamers. But anyway, your validation, you coached me on a lot of things in that meeting and then beyond, and then invited me out to Washington, D.C. Last February. Got my wife and I got to hang out, got to tour the Museum of the Bible, and then share with you the vision of Maverick River. And yeah, you were just so supportive, and I don't even know if you remember, and I promise I'll stop talking in a minute, but you were like, hey, so did you start the nonprofit? Because I told you I'd cut you a check. I want to be the first giver of this nonprofit. And I
Yeah.
was like trying my best not to cry like a baby in front of you and my wife.
No, I remember well. I Tim, I like getting in on IPOs in the kingdom, initial public offerings. And so uh man, your heart for men and helping churches, it's a big deal. It's a high leverage point in the kingdom. So what a joy to be for me to get in on the get go and to see this dream materialize and mobilize. And every dream, and this is a word for someone listening, it's going to be a roller coaster. There are going to be some high highs and some low lows. And by the way, when you go from the high to the low, last time I was on a roller coaster, my stomach was in my throat. And that's what leadership is. Like, you're going to have to kind of hold it together when you feel like the roller coaster is going up and down. But I'm proud of you for stepping out, and I think it models something, for men and for the kingdom. So yeah.
Well, thank you. That initial validation, and then we walked over to House of Prayer at National Community Church, and that's your Thursday night kind of prayer and worship night. And Corey and I were just enjoying as regular people, and then you threw a curveball, and you're like, you had told us earlier, there's what's beautiful about House of Prayers. It's kind of just, we see what happens. You don't prepare a sermon. It's not a traditional Sunday service. It's a different deal. And it was beautiful to see. And I think you had told me Lent had just started. So it was a bigger attendance maybe than normal. And
Yep.
at least 1,200 people, I would guess. And you get up there and you're like, hey, my friends Tim and Corey are here, and they're going to launch this new ministry, and then you commissioned and prayed over us, and I'm still blown away by that moment because no one even knew about Maverick River yet, and here I was getting commissioned by someone very special to me in the freaking capital of the United States of America. I'm like, what in the world? Only God could pull this off. And that just lit a fire under me,
Uh,
the mission. And so it's been a year of Maverick River. I don't want to talk too much about that as much as like first and foremost, like why were you so supportive of the mission, and what did you see that you're like, I'm gonna, yeah, and that's, I know that's kind of what you do, and you've done that with a lot of people. So maybe you can even speak to that, in that someone did that for you, if I'm not mistaken. And so
yeah.
you hear about that.
Yeah. Well, everybody needs somebody who believes in them more than they believe in themselves. And I've had a few of those people kind of come along when we church planted with 19 people. A guy named Dick Foth came along, put his arm around my shoulder, former church planter and college president, and really believed in us more than we believed in ourselves. And I think every author was a first-time author. Every leader was a first-time leader. Every parent was a first-time parent. Like the way we see it is we feel like God has called us to almost give a birthright and a blessing to dreamers, people that have a dream from God,
Yeah.
but it's beyond their ability, beyond their resources. And we want to be the ones to help them get into the batter's box, take a swing, and at least get to first base. And that's kind of how we see it, that if we can advance the kingdom by empowering leaders and dreamers, that's a big deal. And then the fact that your heart is for men. I wear a few hats between pastoring and writing, but maybe we'll come back to this, but a book that was near and dear to my heart that I wrote years ago was Play the Man.
Yeah.
And how do we disciple men? And then beyond that, fathers, husbands, how do we empower men to be men of God and to really pursue the things of God? So I think it's a high leverage point in the kingdom, and it's no secret that the Old Testament ends, the hanging chad, the dangling participle, if you will, is turn the hearts of the fathers to the children. And so I think that's often when and where cultural change, when and where revival happens. So I think anything we can do with men, and this is coming from a guy, please hear my heart, that half of our staff is women, and equally anointed and gifted. So it's not at all, I just think men need some other men to come alongside them and be an encouraging word. So that's kind of the heart behind it. And I think dreamers see other dreamers, and I knew it would take a little extra to step out of a pretty comfortable place, and a place where there was a lot of fruit and fruitfulness.
Yeah.
But good is the enemy of great. I think Jim Collins said that, and you never want to settle for second best. So I think stepping out, most people don't finish because they don't start. So there you have it.
No, man, I'm so grateful, because even you saying that is interesting. I haven't thought about that, of like, yeah, it's even harder to dream and execute on it when you're in a very comfortable place with fruit. And there is.
Yep.
And I'm still part-time at Mariners and building this thing alongside it. And God is totally blessing the men at Mariners Church. And now, believe it or not, we're helping 7 churches right now build men's ministries, and God's doing all sorts of amazing things. One day I'll help National Community Church build the men's ministry.
There you go. Love it.
Play the Man is the first book I picked up of yours. I didn't know who you were. I was sitting in the Mariners bookstore. I was the men's pastor, so I was like, I better read this. This is years ago, probably right when it came out. And it was like so massively impactful. I love your writing style, totally resonated. I'd love to talk about Play the Man. It feels like you already brought it up. It was on my list of things to ask you about. And so even give us the context to the phrase "play the man" because it's awesome. It reminds me kind of what you did with Honey and the Circle Maker, kind of a similar vibe.
Yeah, I mean, it's a true story. Polycarp,
That's right.
one of the early martyrs of the church, marched into the Colosseum told to renounce his faith or face the consequences. And he heard this voice from heaven, play the man, Polycarp. And I won't even ruin all of the details. Like, it's worth picking up the book just to have that story in your back pocket.
Oh my
Because Tim, it'll preach, right? It'll
goodness. So well.
it'll preach, especially when it's a true story. And by the way, we think from church history that Polycarp was discipled by John the Beloved. And so there is like this mentorship chain that's pretty fascinating. And but just a challenge, like what does it mean to play the man? And so, I tease out a few different convictions or values of what does it mean, tough love? What does that look like? Well, it probably looks like Jesus carrying a 300-pound cross 600 yards down the Via Dolorosa. That's probably what it looks like. And so it's this idea that, well, Dorothy Sayers said that Jesus wasn't crucified because he was a bore. No, he was crucified because he had this shattering personality. And Dorothy Sayers said we have turned the Lion of Judah into a house cat for pale priests and pious old ladies. That's a paraphrase, but Jesus is the not just the man, but the Son of Man and the Son of God. So I think he is the quintessential. Eugene Peterson said, Jesus is the dictionary in which we look up the meaning of words. So if you want to know what it means to be a man of God, you look at the Son of God, and he sets the example. So tough love would be one of those things, and talk about vision and other pieces, and then the first half is kind of these 7 principles of manhood or 7 dimensions of manhood. But then the second half, man, Tim, we probably ought to talk about that a little bit.
No, I want to, because
that was the fun part of the book to write, where I detail some of the rite of passage, year of discipleship, discipleship covenant, some of the things that I've done with my kids, and I want to be careful not to take any credit that I don't deserve. Like, I'm like everybody else. I'm reading every resource out there. So, some of those ideas probably were from Raising a Modern Day Knight, is a book I read that influenced me early on. But then I wanted to put my fingerprints on it. And the second half of that book is just to empower dads. Hey, you do it the way you want to do it, but here's a framework in which you can walk through this process. So I trust you to kind of point us in a direction here, but that's sort of the heart of the book.
I do want to spend time on that, but I will say it, and maybe you don't want me to. Polycarp, what do you not want to say what happened to him? Because
he was martyred, but when they began to, it's a little grotesque, right?
It is. It's all right.
But it's kind of miraculous that there were a lot of early believers who were burned at a stake, but he somehow, almost like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, according to eyewitnesses, did not catch fire, that the fire did not burn him. And they eventually, with a spear long enough not to feel the heat, killed him that way. Like I mean, it's a crazy, crazy story, but I think it's one of those things that then gave a certain level of courage. Like when people saw his witness, it was hard to deny in that Coliseum. So it convicted those who were there for the circus, so to speak, and it inspired believers that, hey, I'm going to live my faith, even if it means dying. And so he's one of those early Fox's Book of Martyrs, one of the early heroes of the church that wouldn't compromise his conviction. So it's a story that's worth knowing and sharing. And so Play the Man, the title, of course, comes from that historic incident.
Yeah, and you had mentioned this. I think he heard God's voice when he was already he was already on the stake, and he heard God, kind of this voice of God that said, "Play the man."
Yep.
Eventually, back down. You know who you are. You know how this ends. I got you. And then they lit fire, and no burning. And it's eyewitness account. It's been documented, and that alone just fires me up. Like, for the men listening, and they need to read this book, and we'll link the show notes with the book and all your books. But man, it just, that alone of trusting God, being obedient, and not backing down from anything. But yes, the second half of the book, the rite of passage, I would love for you to unpack what that looked like. I mean, it's taken, you modeled it with your sons, but share some of what you did and some wisdom for us.
Yeah. Well, I once was, this was right before writing the book. I was in a gathering, about 500 guys, Tim, and I asked the question, how many of you were discipled by your dad? And 3 hands went up. And the crazy thing is, some people might be surprised that even 3 out of 500 hands went up. Right. It's something that isn't really modeled. And I want to be careful because, like, maybe you had a dad who was a little bit more passive, didn't actively disciple, but set a great example. I am not at all minimizing the significance of that. And this isn't to make listen, dads go on enough guilt trips as it is. I'm not going to be the guy to send you on another one. If you're an earthly father, by definition, it means you fall short and you're imperfect. But by the way, that sets up your greatest opportunity. Because if your kids don't ever hear you apologize, how are they going to learn to say sorry? So as a dad, your mistakes set you up to eat a slice of humble pie and teach your kids how to pick up the pieces when they mess up. So don't beat yourself up. That's the voice of condemnation. That's the enemy. And the good news is we have a heavenly Father who makes up the difference for these imperfect earthly fathers. So I better say that up front.
That's good.
So I also know most dads, if you weren't discipled by your dad, like, you don't know how to do it because you never experienced it. So my goal was to kind of lay out a simple game plan, not complicated. And Oswald Chambers said, let God be as original with others as he was with you. I quote that all the time because what I'm about to share is not me saying you should do it this way. I felt like 12 years old was still wet cement. That's about a good age, right before that 13 teenage transition, that 12 to 13. But I know dads who 16 to 17, or they feel like, man, I missed my window. No, 21 to 22, whatever. It's never too late. But I felt like 12 to 13, I want to create a discipleship covenant. I would take my boys camping, just create kind of a moment, And we didn't sign the covenant in blood or anything, Tim. There was nothing that was like super. They didn't have to go out and kill a lion either. It's not like but I wanted something that they would remember. And they were agreeing to a physical challenge, mental challenge, and spiritual challenge. So with my oldest son, it was doing a triathlon, training for it and doing it together. With my youngest son, it was a bike century. With my daughter, it was the escape from Alcatraz. It was a swim. So you find something that you can a common goal that you can go after physically, and then spiritually you start working on spiritual disciplines, and then mentally I wanted them to read a dozen books. I think leaders are readers, and so we chose books, some of them as maybe predictable as Purpose-Driven Life, but some that were a little out there, like the Alchemist, books that would create conversation.
Sure.
And then we do a father-son meeting once a week. And at the end, as those 3 challenges were completed, we did a rite of passage. And I know we don't have all day to describe this, but I chose Grand Canyon. With one son did a rim to rim hike, and with the other we rafted the Colorado River and then hiked out of the canyon. Because Tim, I wanted a moment that they would remember forever. And you may say, Mark, that why not just keep it biblical? Well, Jesus climbed the Mount of Transfiguration. Like, there was intentionality there.
Sure.
That I think change of pace plus change of place equals change of perspective. So I wanted a capstone moment to kind of seal that year of discipleship. So that second half of the book kind of details what I walked through. It even gives a little bit of a rough draft for a discipleship covenant. And it's helped a lot of dads just kind of take that first step towards that year of discipleship.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm creeping into my son's turning 12 this summer. And so I'm starting to plan and think about what that would look like. And like you said, to alleviate the pressure, I won't probably do it exactly how you did it. But I'll definitely take some things you did, because for sure some sort of rite of passage trip and some sort of covenant, books read, and all that fun stuff. But you're just
and I hope it includes Play the Man. That would be a good book to read for fathers and sons.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And you guys, when you said you read 12 books, you're both reading these books, and then in your weekly time you're catching up on what you're reading.
Yeah, you're kind of, and it's not like I asked them to do a book report, but it's my way of cracking open that shell and hey, what resonated? What did you hear? What did you read? And it's a conversation starter. And that worked out to about a book a month. And then one of my sons liked fiction a little bit more, so I incorporated some fiction. So part of it is just being a student of your kids and figuring out what's going to resonate.
And if I were to ask your kids about the experience, how do you think they might respond?
Well, I think they would feel like it was their dad who, was pastoring a church, a dad who was writing books, but a dad who prioritized my time with them. And so I think they would look back on it, and would they be able to remember what we talked about each week? Absolutely not. Such is life. People can't remember the sermon I preached a week or two ago, but that's okay. I think they would look back and know that, you've heard me say this so many times, that at the end of the day, I want to be famous in my home. And I think our kids sort of vibed with that. and they felt like I was prioritizing time with them. And then, and the trip itself and the challenges take a lot of planning and a lot of intentionality. And generally speaking, kids, even tweens and teens, even if they're going through all the crazy changes, neurological, biological, chemical changes called puberty, like they're still going to appreciate and recognize intentionality. And so I think they would look back on it and say that that was a special season or a special year.
Love it. Um, the other book I wanted to talk about briefly, because I buy it and I give it away more than any other book of yours, and that's Draw the Circle, which started with Circle Maker. And so I'm sure there's plenty of people that will be listening that are like, what does that mean? What's Circle Maker? And then how Circle Maker came into Draw the Circle. So
Yeah, well, the short version, true story. Again, first century BC, a guy named Honi, during a famine or drought in Israel, the people asked him to pray for rain, almost like Elijah praying for rain. And he took his staff, drew a circle in the sand, knelt in that circle, and prayed this prayer: Sovereign Lord, I swear before your great name that I will not leave this circle until you have mercy upon your children. That's a bold prayer. If God doesn't answer, you're going to be in that circle a long time. You're going to look pretty foolish, but God honors bold prayers. Bold prayers honor God. And I share a little bit of our journey here in DC. That, I mean, it's a crazy story, Tim. I mean, 4.7 mile prayer circle in 1996 when we had like 19 people. And now, 28 years later, I wasn't praying for property. I was just praying for people.
right.
But we own 6 properties worth $85 million debt free on that prayer circle. We own a city block on Capitol Hill, which it's just crazy. But every prayer has to meet a twofold litmus test. It has to be in the will of God for the glory of God. This is not about us outlining our agenda to God. This is about God outlining his agenda to us. And newsflash, his vision for your life is bigger than yours.
Yes, it is.
So I make no apologies for dreaming big, praying hard, and thinking long. And that's kind of the heart behind the Circle Maker. And then Draw the Circle is just, what if we just for 40 days made it a season of prayer? And not necessarily circling property. I think the most important thing you can circle is your marriage, your family. And so I think there's something about praying consistently for 40 days. I'm trying to trick people a little bit, Tim, because if I can get you to pray for 40 days, you're probably still going to be praying on day 41. So the idea is just the prayer habit is so important, but there's something about that 40-day challenge and a daily kind of shot of adrenaline that's helped a lot of people draw the circle.
Yeah. And you even talk about it, about how many people have been drawing circles, i.e., praying consistently for something. And some of these bold prayers come to fruition. Obviously, your story with National Community Church and owning 6 properties outright. Is it 6 or 8? Did I mess that up?
No, it's 6 properties right on that prayer circle.
Yeah. And then, people who wanted to get a job in politics on Capitol Hill, and all, and people's health miracles, countless stories of people circling these things. And I think what is so inspirational about it is you're just hearing repeat God stories.
Yeah.
And what it does, like you just even said, God honors bold prayers, and bold prayers honor God. Sometimes I'll just speak for myself. As men, sometimes we're not prayer warriors. And when we do pray, we're not necessarily praying bold, big, audacious prayers that are like big dreams, but God desires that for us. So it always fires me up to help guys dream and pray, and get and become, flex, work out that muscle that we need to be men of prayer, and
Yeah.
not small ones, big ones.
Yep.
And so
And this, Tim, this might be an interesting point to kind of, I just want to be an encouragement that my personal prayer life was a little bit or a lot of bit stronger than my prayer life with my wife, Laura. And it's just recently that we found a little bit of a stride or a rhythm that has helped us kind of up our prayer game a little bit. But don't feel like, I so often feel like I'm still in kindergarten when it comes to prayer.
yeah,
But just a word of encouragement that, yeah, there's something about prayer that prayer is how we write history before it happens. Prayer is the difference between the best I can do and the best God can do. Uh, I don't think the Bible was meant to just be read, it was meant to be prayed through. So I think finding ways to get prayer into the rhythm of your life. And I think what Draw the Circle does, Tim, is it's almost like, remember with our kids when they were first learning to ride a bike without training wheels. And as a dad, you have to come along behind and you're pushing until they have enough momentum to keep their balance. The way I see it is Draw the Circle is kind of like pushing the bike so that we get enough momentum, and then it cultivates or curates a little bit of this prayer habit. Because sometimes if you just say, hey, pray, like in a vacuum, we don't know where to go or what to say or how to start. And so there's something about that book that I dare say has helped millions of people figure out how to start the prayer engine, to just turn the key and shift into drive and just begin 40 days of prayer.
yes, I know that it was a big part of my faith and obedience journey with Maverick River. And every day I was reading it 2 or 3 pages and Draw the Circle, and then circling in prayer, God, if you'd have me do this, would you go before me and lead me and show me and figure out how the heck to do this? So it's been an inspiration to me, as of you and your books and your sermons. I'd love for you to, we're running out of time, I believe. And so I'd love for you to just end in any sort of encouragement, and then pray for our listeners. Would be awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the word of encouragement is just, you'll never be a perfect husband, you'll never be a perfect dad. But prayer can redeem so much.
Yeah.
And I think had to make a lot of decisions through the years to prioritize. This might be an interesting way to start because it almost opens a new conversation, but we'll just make it food for thought. That I think you have to, one, define success. What does it look like? Because a lot of people so busy climbing the ladder of success that they fail to realize it's leaning against the wrong wall. And you get to the top and it's like, what did I just invest my whole life in?
Sure.
So for me, success is when those who know me best respect me most. That's a hard worked, hard earned definition. And the people who know me best are my wife and my kids. So success for me doesn't hinge on books sold or people pastored or anything else. To me, success is, am I better in private than I am in public, or am I at least the same? Am I a person of integrity? Tim, I listen, I just want to finish well. I want to hear God say, well done, good and faithful servant. I want to fight the good fight, run the good race. And at the end of the day, that's long obedience in the same direction. So like I think my word of encouragement is keep on keeping on. Like keep prioritizing the important things.
Yeah.
Make sure you aren't majoring in minors. And yeah. And so there you have it.
Well, before you pray, I just want to thank you for believing in me, believing in Maverick River, and the mission to just ignite men to follow Jesus and become better men at home, like you mentioned, especially in their marriages and as dads. That's a big part of who we are. We're putting on our first father-son retreat in the fall, so I'm fired up. So thank you for having me.
Let's go.
You
And
ignite
if you
something.
if you want a book donation, if you want, I'll gift copies of Play the Man so you can gift them to those fathers and sons. You just let me know.
Done deal. We're making
Okay. And I'll pray.
Please. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah. Lord, thank you for Tim. Thank you for Maverick River. Lord, thank you for the men who are listening to this podcast. I pray just a word of encouragement. We can beat ourselves up. Sometimes we're our own biggest critic, and we think about the things we said or didn't say, did or didn't do. But Lord, thank you that you're so gracious, that you're a heavenly Father who never gives up on us. And Lord, I just pray for husbands, pray for fathers. I pray great wisdom, and I pray great joy in those different hats that we wear. Lord, I pray that you would raise up a generation of men who play the man, who strive to be more and more like Jesus. And that is my prayer for each and every one of us on this podcast. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.